5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are live. Whenever you are, wherever you are. Thanks for joining the Design of Everyday People podcast, where I talk to senior designers from all over the world and where you get to literally ask them anything. Today's Inside Look edition, not only do we have a senior designer, we also get to peek behind the curtain of a design-led company. So you'll get to hear how the sausage is made. So stick around till the end where you get your questions answered. And like always, start submitting your questions wherever you hear an interesting thought or something pops into your head. So let's start by making this session as interactive as possible. You guys, tell me where you're listening from. Are you from London? Is it, New York? Is it Beijing? Where are you tuning in from? I would love to know. So just drop those emoji and let's get this started. This is the Design of Everyday People.
It sound right, boy.
All right. We have some folks coming in. And to get started, for this event, we partnered with Workflow. Workflow is a space to get feedback and approvals from all your design work. I like the simple and clean UI that organizes my designs, and it helps me consolidate all my feedback in one place. It works with all your daily design tools like Figma, Photoshop, and even videos. We'll show you a bunch of cool stuff later. Pretty cool that it also supports live website, so you can paste in the URL and get feedback directly. Feedback is left right on the asset where you guys are used to it, so it's not scattered in your emails, Slack, or WhatsApp, or all the other places. And let's play that video again. To keep track of all your versions, clients don't need to sign up. You just send them a link and you review the work and they leave feedback. So all the comments and tasks in one place and you can track those versions. So if you're interested in trying out Workflow, then please, I'll show you this QR code and you guys can, here we go. Scan that QR code in the top right to get access. And I've also flashed this QR code down here. And obviously you've seen the video, just how easy it is to leave feedback. I'll just play that just quickly again. So you can go try Workflow for free by scanning this QR code on the screen, or you can visit workflow.design. That's workflow.design. If you're just managing your design feedback is a nightmare, you have to try Workflow. So scan that QR code. I'll leave it in the top corner throughout this session, and we'll get back to the show. All right. So welcome to how to get great feedback to make great designs. Let's start with quick introductions. Like always, I'm Chris, the founder of UX Playbook, but before that, a self-taught UX designer struggling to get into the field. And now I spend most of my time helping designers navigate a fuzzy UX career with UX Playbook, from building your first portfolio to leading your first design team and everything in between. And that's enough about me. Today, I'm joined by Jonathan Quaade, the founding designer at Workflow. So let's get him out and find out more about Jonathan. Jonathan, how are you doing today, man?
Yeah, good, man. Great intro.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Had a lot of practice. So for the audience that don't know you, do you want to tell them about yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm Jonathan. I'm the founding designer at Workflow. I'm Danish Ugandan, but I live in London and have lived here for almost 10 years. It's also my birthday today, actually. So it's my 30th birthday today. So big day. So I feel excited to do this. My background is in graphic design. I studied here in London, but was always really interested in the internet and the web. So I taught myself how to code and got more into product and web. And I've been working in agencies since I graduated university. And then I joined Workflow about 6 months ago as the founding designer.
Wow. Well, I just want to say happy birthday, big 3-0. Huge. Not to make you feel old, but I'm past that. So feels good though. Feels great, right?
No, it feels like life is getting to an amazing point. These are going to be the best 10 years. So that's how I look at it.
There you go, man. They say the new the new 20s is your 30s. So, and someone said happy birthday. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, cheers,
Uh,
Dave. Thank you. Appreciate it.
yeah, big shout out, big shout out. So we have a lot of folks tuning in uh, from all over the place. I believe that's a Croatian flag. We have a Vietnamese flag. Hello, Mia, and someone from Switzerland. So all over the world, people are listening to this, and I just want to remind the audience that as we speak about how to get great feedback and why it's important for us designers to drop your questions in the comments because we will address them later. And sometimes an idea pops into your head, don't want to forget it, just drop it in the comments. Okay, so let me just, I guess, introduce the session and the topic. So we're talking about design feedback, right? I think design feedback is often easier to get, but good design feedback is, I think, actually quite hard, right? Most feedback sessions are too vague. Maybe they're not actionable. Missing the why happens too late. Dominated by the loudest person in the room. Too subjective versus objective. So we end up getting more confused in the meeting and not less confused. So that's why it's great to have you here, Jonathan, because you're the perfect person to talk to because not only you're a designer, but you're building feedback tools to help creatives facilitate that process of getting better feedback. So why don't we
Yeah.
start that conversation here? Why do you think feedback is core to better designs?
I mean, I think I think it's basically fundamental. We talk about this all the time. As you can imagine, when you're making something for feedback, you're also feedbacking on the thing that you're making as well. So we're constantly in this flow. But feedback is essentially core to design. I look at design as an exchange in a way. You can think of as like a solo sport and design as a team sport, where you're really trying to work together with someone else to create something great. Design doesn't really ever happen without a client, right? Even if the client is yourself. And so you need to constantly be sharing that with the other person or the other people that you're working with to kind of get their thoughts on things, to move things forward. And I believe as well that like design is just done better with more people. And so it's really important to keep everyone aligned and get feedback in that way. So it seems it's integral, right? Like design doesn't really work without feedback. They go hand in hand, or with any creative discipline, essentially. Um, I think the I guess we'll talk about this a bit later, but I think there are basically two distinctions in design feedback. One is like all the tactical stuff, like all the minutia of the details, like are we looking at the same thing? Is it timely feedback? Is it the right resolution? Did the client see the right thing? Did you not make spelling mistakes? Like all these like small things that distract you from actually focusing on the work. Like where's the link? I mean, that's the one we all experience this all the time, right? Like 1,000 links flying around, or you open the wrong thing, or they can't find the thing in Figma, or whatever it is. There's all like this sort of pragmatic logistical stuff where workflow, we really strive to solve all of those things for you, right? Like that's kind of our objective, is to kind of take away all that faff that you have to deal with to kind of set yourself up for good feedback. And then there's all the sort of philosophical and much more complicated things around feedback, which is like, how do you create alignment? How do you keep energy? How do you make sure that you understand what the client is saying? How do you make sure that it's moving the project forward? How do you make sure keeping everyone aligned? Are you communicating the right things to the client? Are you sharing the right things at the right time? Those are all the much harder things to do. But again, at Workflow, we're trying to have these conversations a lot. And we've even started a podcast recently that we're launching soon, where we're going to be talking to some really amazing people to get their thoughts on how they deal with, but also struggle with feedback. Like it's a real thing. It's like the hardest thing in design is getting good feedback.
Right, right. And do you think that building systems for design feedback is important because it's so hard and there's something in there, right?
Yeah, I think yes, 100%. And I'll say in a very personal way why I think it's such a big problem from my experience, or like why I decided to join a company building this. So I was working at Pentagram before, which was my dream job. I was working with Luke and Jody Hudson Powell, and I always wanted to work there when I was a student. and I would have a great time. I was a digital design lead there. I was leading projects, working on amazing startups, doing a bit of everything, branding, websites, product, everything. And the only proposition that got me to move away from it was to work on a problem that felt bigger, but also close to my heart. And it was specifically around design feedback. And the reason I say that is because the pressure on designers to create work and to be understood by people is quite a unique one and quite a difficult one. So if you're working as a designer, it's very easy for everyone to you're working with to think that what you're doing is easy, right? It's like make it bigger. We all meme about it, make the logo bigger, make it red. Why is it so hard? Why did it take so long? And there's a sort of lack of there's sometimes a lack of respect for the craft of it and how hard it is to do that doesn't come from like other disciplines like finance or banking or medicine, right? You're not really questioning your doctor on the science, right? Like, or where to stick the needle, right? You're not really questioning that. But with design, you would say like, well, we get things from clients all the time like that. And I think the pressure on designers to have that kind of relationship and that empathy is like one that is very important, very difficult, and also very like can be very exhausting. And so the proposition of working on something where like let's take away all the things that all the things that we can take away from you that are annoying or difficult, like all the logistical stuff, missed comments, missed feedback in emails, not on the right thing, wrong asset, the list goes on. That felt really, really exciting. And then also when I started looking like where is the world of design heading, there's just going to be way more design being produced, and the pressure on designers is going to increase with artificial intelligence in ways that are probably we can't even comprehend. So right now we're already making design on like 1,000 different surfaces, right? You're making a video campaign, you're doing a social media post, and you're doing a website, you're doing a product, and probably all together at the same time for the same client with like an infinitely shrinking timeline. Like it feels like timelines are getting shorter. And so there's this example at Wimbledon where they had to produce 1,000 pieces of content for the 2 weeks of Wimbledon.
Wow.
Like imagine the feedback process for that, right? Like how do you even keep up? And so that is the trajectory that a lot of design is going to go towards. And so whether you're making it yourself or an AI is making it for you, or you've got a team of people doing it or a team of AI agents doing it, there's going to have to be a review process somewhere along the way to manage that. And so working on that problem felt like it was one of the most impactful things that I could do with my time, and probably one of the most interesting things as well. And it was a space that wasn't really, there was a lot of focus on creation, but not a lot of focus on feedback. And that felt like the sort of missing piece that I felt really excited to work on.
Awesome. Yeah. And talking about more things getting produced, and how, I guess, have you guys been thinking about it at Workflow, where it's like there's just so much across these various platforms?
Yeah.
How does that get systematized? Or is there do you think about this helping designers customize their feedback process? Or are you like, however you want to get feedback's up to you, it just kind of works? Like how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. This is a really difficult problem. I mean, but one that I think we have a pretty strong opinion on, one we've developed, at least I should say. If we can't, we have to just solve first and foremost that getting feedback on whatever you're making easy, right? Like you send a link to someone and they can just click and leave comments on it, right? And that is a technical problem. But it's also a focus problem. Primarily, we think of it, right? Like a lot of objections we get is like, why wouldn't I just use Figma? And like, yeah, if your client knows Figma, Figma is probably great for you, but most clients don't know Figma. And the system around Figma is very, very complicated. It's very, very busy. And if you're imagining that your client is as busy as you, if not busier, and they've got family and kids and friends and whatever, and you invite them into this like incredibly noisy space, and you're expecting them to like look at this thing and really focus on it when there's like 1,000 buttons and bells and whistles going on around, that's not really like a high empathy environment where you're going to get great feedback. And I'm not saying this in a way to patronize, because I think all designers know this. We spend probably like 30% of our time prepping the thing we want to get feedback on, right? Like get the presentation right, send the right loom, you do all these things for curation, but like it's very easy with how our computers are set up to just like dart off somewhere else. A Slack message comes in, get lost in something, or if it's a big project, like your Figma file gets really big, or there's multiple links going around. So we look at it as just as like, can we try to resolve that problem for you, right? Like that, the focus part. Then there's a technical part of like, can I leave a comment on the filter in the bottom left-hand corner on a mobile screen in Safari, and me as a designer know that the client left it there, right? Like sort of really like we want the comment specifically there, and that's like what Figma and Canva and all these kind of things do very well. But they do it very well in an environment where everyone understands the tool.
Yeah.
And 90% of our users, if not more, will always be first-time users, and probably one-time users as well. So we look very empathetically as like, you're working for someone who's not technical, who doesn't know the tools, and they want to get feedback on the thing they've commissioned you to do. And you guys need to have a great way of talking about that work. And if it's one link in one place for all your assets and it works every time, we will have done a really, really good job to setting you up for that. And then from there, once we have done that really well, then we can start thinking about AI automations and all this kind of other stuff. But that's sort of what we're supremely focused on, is that, right? And it's a much bigger challenge than I expected, and it's fun, but it's hard.
Yeah, you look like you're really passionate about it, and you're like, I'm up for the challenge. So that's good, right? That you found somewhere that you're really passionate about. That's really awesome. Want to go a bit more tactical here, where if we were to like speak to you earlier in your career and say like, well, if you were giving advice to 21-year-old Jonathan, how would you what would you say to him when he asks you, how should designers ask for feedback? Like, what would you say?
Man, it's so hard. There's so many variables, right? I think you have to start the project with high level of empathy, right? Really try to understand this person you're working with, or these people you're working with. Where are they coming from? Why have they asked you these questions? What are their backgrounds? Some of them might have experiences from other companies. Like this one, we got a lot of Pentagram, where like someone's worked at Airbnb, and Airbnb had a certain way of doing things, and therefore they saw the world through that lens. And so when we had to present stuff back to them as for feedback, we'd have to ask in a way that felt consistent with their worldview. I think a lot of times you get bad feedback because you try to present things in a way that doesn't align with how that company or that person sees the world. The classic one is data-driven companies or A/B testing companies. They oftentimes, I felt that those companies, they struggle with like single solutions. Here's the one thing we're going to do for you. They're like, oh, but how's that going to work? What about all these other variables, right? Like they want to know that there's some data and information and something they can go out and like test and come back with us. Or there's something that they can look at internally and say, yeah, this maps onto our internal reality. And we need to understand that from them. So I would probably say spend more time upfront than you think is necessary. And also probably be a little bit adaptive as to how you present things according to who you're working with. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't like just upload it to workflow in our scenario and you present it there, but maybe the way you lay it out, or the way you present it, or how many things you show at a time, or how you frame that first email, or if you do 1 share or 10 shares or group shares or whatever. I think that's the thing I underestimated, which is that I thought I had a process, and I would create an amazing process and it would work every single time, but it doesn't, right? And there's sort of adaptations. I'll be really tactical actually on one thing. So when you share websites, we share wireframes, to show like this is the initial thing of how things are going to look, or product wireframes. And then we try to do that. We try to keep it in wireframe form for as long time as possible, because it's very time consuming to create high fidelity stuff. The big mistake I learned over time is that works really well with people who are creative already. They want to see just wireframe stuff because they understand the distraction of like high fidelity stuff.
Mm.
But for people who are for normal people, I would probably say, it's very hard to like visualize what a wireframe is going to look like. So the attention that they have on that probably lasts about one meeting. You can probably show wireframes one time, I felt, where you could really get them to focus on this is when you click on this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. When you came back and did it again, the eyes just glazed over, like it was, you didn't really get it. And then when you would show the high fidelity thing later, they'll bring up all these objections that you could have addressed early on. So we started adapting our process at Pentagram, where we would then just do one round of wireframes and then move straight to high fidelity, because we just got way better feedback and much more input and much more excitement as well. They were just much more excited about seeing what their company was going to look like, but that always had to adapt depending on the company though, or the people you were working with.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? Because everybody has a different perspective of what they understand in terms of whether it's product, whether it's design, whether it's like how things work. So meeting where your clients or stakeholders are is probably usually a good start. And then until you run against a brick wall, and then you're like, okay, that didn't work. That was the worst feedback session. Let's pivot, right? I think I've been in a few of those as well. Yeah, they're not nice, but we learn.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about like how do you guys dog food your own product, and your go-to approaches for getting feedback within your product. Could you share your screen and let us peek behind the curtain?
Sure. Yeah.
Let
I
me.
don't even have a client-facing like version, so you guys would just see
Okay.
everything.
Okay, good. All right, let me activate that screen share. Here we go. All right, this is the behind the scenes, guys. Don't leak this on the internet.
You're cheeky. So generally speaking, we use workflow for everything. I'll maybe open up a different tab, but yeah, we use workflow for everything. We've got all our projects in here. There's quite a few, and we're always kind of working on a couple of different things at a time. This is like a website design project that we've got going. We've got a few different tasks, and we've just launched a new website. So please head over to workflow.design and check it out. And we're making a few updates still, so we still got a few in progress tasks. And so, for example, when we work on things like that, we usually will set out some kind of like briefing or idea of like what we're trying to achieve, and then we will decide on whether or not we're gonna explore that in like big blue sky thinking, or we're going to think about it in much more like granular small details. So like a granular small detail example is that like on our pricing page, we had this issue that people didn't really understand like how our pricing worked. And this is sort of a thing I upload directly from Figma, where we were just uploading the work in here, and I was doing like an initial review myself, but we like to try to keep it all in workflow, so all the feedback sits in one place. And Tanvi, our head of marketing, was giving feedback on that as well. And we went through like a few different versions here, where we were kind of talking specifically about copy. So this was mainly like copy related things. We're kind of nearing the end of the website, and this is where we're getting feedback on it. And then we went all the way to like a final version here, where we then approved it. You can see Will liked this version over here. So that's like a sort of very focused, like tactical one, where we usually do mostly like flat designs. A fun one that we're working on at the moment is within our product. So we're working at the moment on a experience of thinking about how do people first arrive inside workflow. And rather than like really writing a really tight spec or anything, Will and I decided like, why don't we just go in on this and just really think completely fresh, like how would we do this? And so there was no scope or remit or anything on that. And this maybe goes on like how to get clear feedback, which is we knew that when I would share this with the team, that everyone's feedback would be around this idea of like, what are we excited about in here, right? So we're not necessarily thinking about details or like necessarily like design aesthetics, but like what parts of this excited us and were like cool ideas we wouldn't have come up with. And that helped the process because we didn't have like a very tight spec on like what it was going to look like. So here I'm playing around with like, how do we build out a project page that feels maybe a little bit more native to design experiences and not like your sort of common like project management tool. And this is just kind of me clicking through like what happens as someone grows their workflow platform and adds more projects. What would that look like? And here we're sharing like in video. So like I'm leaving like actual feedback directly on this video as well for Will to review. So you can see here, I've left a comment here about what I was trying to achieve, so he could understand what was going on. Even though it's a prototype, there might be some nuances that he didn't understand. And then we kind of just go through different rounds of that. So now I shared another version of prototype. We made a few more changes where I'm showing like, how would you create a project? Like how maybe we can add in drag and drop in files. How does that appear? So like this is taking that concept and really showing it throughout the entire experience of a user, rather than just like an isolated moment that felt like a cool idea. Because here now we're sort of starting to test out like, okay, that actually felt like a really strong concept. Does it work? You know, like what other scenarios do we need to kind of think about and make sure that that is working across? And the ability just to have like this to do a prototype Figma, record it, upload it to workflow, and then get feedback like specifically on the pixel and on the timestamp feels really, really powerful. And then we go all the way up, another prototype, and then we go all the way up to like, okay, now we really need to lock this down. So we're doing clear wireframes. You can see a lot of different feedback from Will, but a lot of it is mostly just really small design details. So we still approved it at the end, but here we're starting to go in and really like analyze like what word are we using, singular website on copy and stuff. And so this is where like setting out the context of like what you're working on and how you're going to give feedback at each stage maybe aligns with what we're talking about, which is the first rounds were big blue sky thinking, ignore copy, ignore like all these little details, focus really on the concept. And then here at the end, we're like, okay, now really dig in and like criticize everything, right? Like alignment, copy, color, everything that you think you can think about, like everything's up for grabs. And that's also why like the level of comments on this seems much more intense than the videos. Because the videos were much more about like sense checking ideas and stuff. And you can see, we have little tags here to explain like to someone like what is it that's going on in this exact flow. Yeah, so that's sort of like one example. And then lastly, I just wanted to show that, which is kind of our signature feature, which is that you can get live feedback as well on your website. So here we're working on workflow.design, which is a live website that we made in Webflow. And here I've left comments for our developer Rio, who's been working on it. And so I actually just clicked on a comment that I left on a mobile version, and it instantly changed the size for me, and I can see the mobile screen that I've left comments on. So that's really, really cool, which means I can just go in here and I can scroll around and I can leave like very specific feedback for like what we should be doing on the website. And it's as easy as just scrolling down here and saying like, can we change this to a green watch, right? This to a green watch. I can't spell green watch. And then that comment sits there, and there's some information about the screen size and everything that it was on. So that's really, really cool, and it stays on that asset even if I change screen size. Like it's stayed on that pixel. Boom. Even if I go to a smaller size, it's still here. So that's really, really cool, and that's how we do all our feedback.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the surprising, like awesome, delightful features where it's like, hey, click on that, and then it just goes, hey, here's the size that we left it at. And yeah, that was really nice. Yeah, that's such a tiny detail that I think only designers care about. Like, as in like, or at least appreciate more, right? And I'm like, wow, that's good. And plus, I think the video is also a great thing. Like leaving like having timestamps on comments is so powerful just in general, and I think like more like tools should adopt that, and I'm glad you guys did.
We had a call with someone. Sorry to interrupt, but we had a call
Okay.
with one of my friends, David, who was saying that when he was getting feedback on videos before Workflow, he was literally taking out every single frame of the video and laying it out in Figma, so that the client could watch the video and then like leave feedback like on each frame. Like the lengths we go to get great feedback are just like so intense. And I showed him this and he was like, this is insane. Like I don't need much more than be able to like leave comments in the exact moment. And think about how painful it is if you're not doing that. You're like writing emails with a timestamp and trying to explain what you're trying to get feedback on, right? Like so much work that could just be a click and a type, right? Like it's so easy.
Yeah. I was working with, well, I'm still working with a video editor, and exactly, it's like if you can't leave feedback on the timestamp, like actually on the video, then it's like all this trying to describe something, and it just takes so much longer, and it's just
Yeah.
non-obvious. So that's
Yeah.
that's such a good feature.
Yeah.
I want to kind of zoom us back into something that could help, designers maybe at the like more earlier in the journey, or ones that are thinking about how do I build a design team that is feedback centric. Like, what's
Mhm.
kind of one ritual that's really helped you in terms of with your team or with the folks you've worked with? What's something that folks could maybe implement tomorrow if it's not like a crazy system?
Do you mean like let's maybe like try to pinpoint this person? Like I'm a young person who's working in a design studio already, you mean? And there's some other people around me. Is that the context that you mean? I just want to
Yeah.
make it really specific.
Yeah, let's just say I'm, a couple of years in design and I'm working in a professional environment and I have a design team. So I'm working on the design team. Is there
Cool.
some ritual that you would, you know, I don't know, advise folks to think about or bring to the team?
Okay, yeah, there's a really small thing which works quite well. It's like a psychological hack, which
Mhm.
is someone tells you a couple things actually. So your creative director tells you to do something like, please give me 5 different versions of this landing page, right? Or give me a version of this landing page that does this thing. And a lot of times you might think to yourself, I don't actually agree with that, but you don't really have time or feel you have the authority to like question it. Or even they say, no, 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 please just go and do this. I think the mistake you can make sometimes in a creative environment, this is very creative, like maybe don't apply this to like client relationships in the same way, but is that you just refuse to do it, right? And you kind of are like, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to do my own thing. I think you should try and do the version that they've asked for and then do the other versions that you want, right? So you can show to them that like, I can take direction, I can listen to you, and that's also really important to show. But also, I have my own ideas and my own thoughts for how this could be better, right? That both shows one that you can produce a lot of variety and you can take ownership of a project and not be prescriptive about a solution that you think is right personally, which I think is easy to think that my idea is the best idea. So that's like one thing I would think of, which is you can definitely push back against people's opinions you don't agree, but it's usually much more productive to say, cool, I'm not sure I agree, but let's try it out. And I also have my own ideas, and I'm going to show you both of them. We can discuss this like comparison, right? It's like much more easy to discuss concrete things than abstract theory. The other one is when you present something, you can say, before you start, just say like, walk through everything. And then right at the end, you say, have I completely missed the mark, right? You frame it as like a negative proposition because you most likely haven't, right? But it gets people to look at like the positive side of things rather than the negative side. When you share stuff, generally people are always trying to look at like what's wrong. So even if you've done a perfect job, people will always usually feel safer if they can like nitpick one little thing. But if you frame it as the other way around, people say, "Oh no, no, actually it's great. Like these are all the positives, da 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 da." And yes, there's a few little negatives as well that you could maybe change, but it changes um, the what do you say? Like the mindset someone goes into when they give feedback from a negative frame, like what is wrong, to, oh yes, there's actually many good things about this, and there's a few little things we need to change, right? So this is a very tactical, like psychological hack.
Yeah, I really like that one. Do you have something that potentially managers could implement with like designers on their team? Any ideas? Are you a big fan of like weekly crits or things like that?
We had very little like formal structure at Pentagram, so it's hard for me to speak to that. It was much more like, let's just get everyone around and talk about it, like casually. We were in the office, so it's usually easier. So weekly crits, I think maybe that's more like in design agency world, you usually have timelines and deadlines. You probably have to meet quite a lot, maybe much sooner. I think maybe on like bigger product scale teams in startups, you have these like longer projects where you can have like 5 days to work on something. It's quite hard to get that time in agencies. From what I know, maybe I could be wrong. For managers, in my experience, I think I said this in another discussion recently. I think the most important thing is you need to make sure your team feels excited. Once their excitement goes, like the quality of the work drops, their adherence to whatever you want to do isn't as interesting, the idea is not going to be as fun. So even if the client is difficult or the process taking a long time, you need to find ways of just keeping the excitement. And that's like giving them, maybe that's saying, yeah, let's do what the client said, but let's also do these other things. Yes, let's say yes to your cool idea rather than saying, no, it's not going to work. Let's go for ice cream. Like, whatever, like, I'm serious. Like, these are all like things you should probably do. I think clients underestimate that, but I also think managers underestimate like that your team is full of people who love what they do, and they do it probably because even though it makes them less money they could make somewhere else, and they love design and they have cool ideas and they want to try it out, and you need to maintain that energy, because otherwise it becomes like a process and then it kind of loses its magic, you know. So I think saying yes more often than saying no, and then keeping that excitement, I think is so important.
There's something that I think a lot of designers go through, which is how do folks or how do themselves like distinguish the feedback worth acting on versus noise? You like, because anybody could give feedback, like that's the beauty about design, right? But that's also the double-edged sword where it's like, well, what feedback should I listen to? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think to plug our own software, a lot of the noise around stuff can come from the fact that people are not talking about the same thing, right? And at least if you have a way of collecting everyone around the same thing, they're looking at it in the same screen size, the same experience. It's not like, I mean, the common one we used to get was like someone was really zoomed out or really zoomed in, and so they saw it from a completely different perspective. Like, can we make the typeface bigger? You know, like that's one thing. But actually, that person was zoomed very far away, so they thought it was smaller than it was. And so that's one thing where like a lot of the feedback that you can get can be noisy because people haven't been looking at the same way. It's a really hard question. I think you have to try to frame it. I always try to frame it around like, what is the objective we're trying to achieve, and what is the ground truth that we've all decided is the one that we're going to stick to. You know, so for us, a ground truth is that the experience has to be great for people who've never seen workflow before and have no context. So someone tells us, like, let's make it very specific. We get a lot of feedback from people, amazing designers, who say like, can you simplify this, right? And, you know, we have this like toggle at the top that says comment or browse. And yeah, it'd be really cool and clean if we just remove comment or browse. But like, we know from experience that people don't understand what that does if they come in for the first time and they're not a person who uses this kind of softwares. So we choose to ignore that feedback, right? But someone comes in and says, well, I have this really personal experience that we don't really have a great context of, like, I'm trying to think of something. Let's say they work in a particular industry or something, like 3D, for example. We don't have a lot of people who do 3D yet because we don't support 3D, but some people do renders and stuff, and they have a specific thing about like how we frame things or pixel size and stuff. Like, we'll definitely listen to that. We don't really know a lot about it. Let's hear out and like focus on those things. So I think it's come back to like, what are you trying to do? What is the objective? And like tie it all together. And I think that's when you maybe have to push back on the client, if it's a client or your creative director saying like, can we do this? And you're like, well, how does it fit against what we're trying to achieve here, right? Like, the design is trying to do something. It's not a piece of art. So can you frame it around that? And sometimes people give feedback just because they want to feel important, and we all do, let's be honest. So sometimes you have to probably just say, yeah, we'll try it out. And sometimes people forget. And Just move on.
That's a great
Let's be
one.
honest.
That's a great one.
Like let's not make it all philosophical and deep, right? Like sometimes it's just like, let's just see if they remember, and then let's move on.
Yeah,
It might be a
I
passing statement, and
yeah.
and sometimes you get in trouble, but other times you just like, oh yeah, let me try it out, and you can sense check if it's really important to them by sometimes forgetting, by like deciding like not to do it. I wouldn't always advise it. Please think before you do that, but we've all done it. I think we've all done it.
Yeah, I used to get these like random Slack messages from the CEO. It's like, can you do this? Can you do this? And then a lot of times that, because there was just so many, like obviously I'm going to drop the ball, but the next minute he's forgotten, right? Like that always happens. And it's just like maybe he saw something in a certain context and he's like, okay, let me just tell Chris real quick. But it doesn't actually matter on the grand scheme of things. So
That
I
works because you know him, right? I mean, that's why that's a really good frame. You need to know someone before you employ that tactic, right? I wouldn't always advise it. I think the much better one is just trying to make sure everyone's aligned on like what is the objective, and then question it through that frame, right? Would be the right thing.
and you mentioned like, okay, so let's just say we're hyper aligned of the objective. Like, okay, we're trying to do this, and this is the desired outcome.
Yeah.
Then you said something about ground truths. Everybody has to kind of agree on like, well, what does that actually mean? So,
Mhm.
would you say that's critical to every project? Like, there's an objective and there's the desired outcome, but there's also, I guess, things that we care about within that frame that we need to constantly pull them back because maybe they've forgotten or they've kind of wandered in the realm of ideas. Is that really important?
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think so many projects fall apart because of it. They also might fall apart even if you have it, but I think you you need to really like it's a brief, right? Like what is the brief? What are the criteria for what we're doing here? What context do you exist in? Like that's also why I talked to them for a long time. Like what backgrounds do you have? What do you view as important? Why did you make decisions you made in the past? Like maybe they make it like I said before, maybe they make it through a instinctual level, right? So you really need to like coax in some philosophy that they feel is important to them. Like maybe they love like 1970s Sainsbury's ads. And what is Sainsbury's ads? They were like these beautiful, like there was no logo. It was just written Sainsbury's was in the title of everything, but it was no Sainsbury's logo. It was just done in the typeface.
Hmm.
And so maybe this person really likes these like eloquent, long form, highly polished editorial style like kinds of copy, and ads that don't feel like ads. So let's say you're working on an ad for that person, that they're going to be coming from that lens all the time, right? So
Hmm.
probably the first thing you need to ask is like, is that still important to you, right? Really set it out. Like, are you going to accept a solution that's purely visual, right?
Hmm.
Yes, I will. Okay, great. Then you show them a version later down the line that's pretty visual, and they critique it because it doesn't feel eloquent and interesting. And you're like, well, you agreed it wasn't going to be like that. And then they might say, oh yeah, actually, no, you're totally right. Like, actually, I won't accept it if it's visual. And okay, cool, great, right? That was a really important thing that we can frame around the ground truth, and we can update it, and then work on a more 1970s Sainsbury style ad, right? Like, so I think it's really important because you can always use it as a way to test and change the brief, but at least you have something to frame it around. The risk is that you just present stuff and you don't know why they're questioning it. And if you don't know someone, it's hard to maybe know where they're coming from. The feedback we don't write like, I hate the copy for these 800 reasons, and I used to love Sainsbury's, and Ogilvy is my hero, right? Like you don't say that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the briefing is really important. Um, and like, what are you trying to achieve? I think maybe in a design context, you can be a bit more loose because we all go on vibes. Like what looks great, what typeface do you like, and
Hmm.
be a bit more like right brain instead of left brain thinking. But sometimes having like clear metrics you're trying to achieve, or clear things you cannot do or push up against, you can then at least say, well, we've decided to ignore the brief here for these reasons, right?
Right.
And then you can discuss whether that was the right thing to do or not. But at least we're all clear on what we're pushing up against. So I think it's essential, basically.
If so it sounds like part of your brief is also focused on the person giving you the brief or like detailing about the project, right? So you're not just saying what do you want, but also saying like, who are you? What's your background? Like, what kind of stuff do you like? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Much more as well. So you have that context. So when you present something or explore ideas, it's within a frame they could understand and get buy-in. Is that true? Yeah.
100%. I won't name the client, but we had a client who loved wine at Pentagram. So we framed a lot of things, and Interstellar. So we framed things a lot around space and wine and examples of vineyards in America, and like these kind of things. And it got that person excited about the work, and it was something that he mentioned in an early call, and it shows that you listen. And we could frame it in ways that seem completely absurd to you. If I present to you this thing is completely ridiculous, right? But it's a tight little relationship, for 3-4 months, a year, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think for him, it was a way of connecting with the work more deeply, and he really wanted it to feel like that. So yeah, it all sounds ridiculous. It's a bit like, yeah, maybe people will probably think I'm insane, but like this is kind of generally how I think about it. Like you don't exist in a vacuum, and the person that you're working with doesn't exist in a vacuum either. They have experiences, and it's really important, I think, to understand that person, so you can create something great together, right? That's the outcome. We want to create something great. You want something great. Let's do it together.
Yeah, understanding not just your stakeholders, not just your users' mental models, but also your stakeholders, right? How are they thinking about different things? So I know we kind of went over because I had a lot of follow-up questions because that's just how it goes. But
Good.
let's go to some Q&As. And folks, drop your questions in the comments and I'll try and bring them on the screen. But I had, just a few from my side again before anybody has a chance to give theirs. How do you think about helping non-designers give better design feedback?
I think it's also repetitive. I'm so sorry, Chris, but it's all the same. It's basically like trying to, in a few words as possible, make sure that the person is focused on the right things, right? And really trying to tell them we're trying to go from here to here, but we can't focus on like minutia in copy over here, and or color or layout and stuff. Like right now, we're just trying to nail like what do we stand for, right? Like what is this thing going to achieve? What's the website going to look like? What's the overall, like, what are the beats that we're trying to hit, and really just focus on that, right? And so people are probably not going to, they might actually, most times in my experience, they probably still give you feedback on a bunch of stuff you don't actually are asking for. But at least then you know what to ignore, and you very clearly clarify to them what you're going to ignore. And you can say, okay, this is really helpful. We'll remember this for phase 3 when we start doing this thing. I think the other thing is, everyone knows this, right? Like, how do you make sure you frame the work in a way where what they need to focus on is there. And I think this is where workflow is really great, right? Where you can upload everything. It's in one single place. It's very minimal. There's not much else around you. We teach your client like how to use the tool, so you don't have to do that for them, so that you can just explain to them, open this thing, and please tell me if you're happy with these images that I've chosen, right? And you don't have to explain like how the tool works, or like how Figma works, or how to log in, because you don't even need an account. You can just open the link. So I think it's like how maintain focus on like what's important at this phase, and remind them of where you're going. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, and also sounds like there is some sort of setup and context to help the client like channel the thing that's important, right? Like, hey, let's bring you back to here and say, like, remember what we talked about? Okay, here is this, right? Without trying to bias you too much, but giving you enough context for you to be like, look at it in the right mindset versus like, this is the finished product, and you're showing them wireframes, and they're like, dude, what am I paying you for again? Like, stop drawing boxes or whatever it is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Stop.
Okay. Huh?
Stop drawing boxes. I'm gonna use that one. That's
Yeah. I mean, that's my PM friend. He always says, "Hey, you just draw rectangles," and I'm like, "I know."
It's
Like,
not true. Let's be honest.
sometimes circles, sometimes other shapes.
I literally had a day where I was trying to choose the right blue. Like that was a whole day, just like in the sun. Like, how does it look when you print it from this angle? Like all day. That's ridiculous. How's that a job? It's ridiculous.
Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool jobs we have. Yeah. Okay. So we did have a question come in. Let me flash that on the screen. Try to get rid of some of these other stuff. Here we go. My favorite question to ask seasoned designers: what do you do when your stakeholder, client, decision maker are what incessant despite their request being conflict with their goals? So they're saying, okay, meaning sorry, I still want you to do this even though I've set the goals, objectives, or I understand the user pain points. So maybe it could even be another senior stakeholder, right? Like what happens, maybe a co-CEO that gives you feedback, like what happens, how do you deal with that situation? Is it
Yeah.
the same tactics we spoke about, or do you have another trick in the bag?
Trick in the bag. I'm not a magician, so I don't have that many tricks. I think if it's a co-CEO scenario, you gotta just get everyone in the room. Then I think you gotta just say like, well, Harry said this and Juliet said that, and you're not really agreeing, and it's hard for me to know what to do in this environment. So I think let's all get together and talk about it. Like that would be that, right? Especially if it's someone if it's senior to you, right? Like ultimately they have to kind of come to a decision. And I think you can just point out the difficulty, like, I don't really know what to do in this scenario because you guys are not saying the same thing. And I think we need to resolve it. Please let me be in the room because I want to help you guys come to this solution. I would say that's probably how I would say, because internally you have much more time and empathy and you know each other, and it's a very different environment. So you can take it in that way. With a client, it's much trickier because ultimately they're paying you, right?
Yeah.
It does work like that. Like, it sucks to say it, but it does work like that. So I think if you've done everything, you feel like you've done everything right, like it's very hard as well when the project goes very smoothly and then like right at the end they say like, let's change what we want to do. I think you can point out for as long as possible, this feels in conflict with our goals. How is it going to match up? And if you've built a good relationship, you can probably push back a lot. Then this is maybe where you can start to say, okay, well, let's try what you want, but will you allow us to also show you this other option? And they're like, cool, yeah, let's do both. And then at some point they might decide that they want to go with the thing that they have, and you might have to just do it. Like, ultimately it's their business, it's their responsibility. They have to live with the decision. And even if it's frustrating for you, this is something I didn't really understand until I came on this side of the table. Like, it's very hard to live with these decisions because they have sometimes permanent impact on your business, and sometimes it's hard to take that risk. So that's maybe where you have to think about, okay, cool, well, if you want to do this thing, let's call it like the vanilla option, and we were trying to do the super spicy one. Let's give you like how you could maybe build up to the other one, or why don't we A/B test these two things or something like that. I think it's really hard, but I think you just have to try to be empathetic, and maybe the best thing I could say is like push back, and then at some point maybe say, let's do both. And if they still refuse, then you're like, okay, well, I don't actually agree with this, but I'm very happy to do my best on this thing you've asked for, but I don't really believe in it, so it's hard for me to give you a very good recommendation on this, right?
Yeah, and if you like are transparent about, just exactly what you said, Jonathan, and also tell them about the trade-offs, right? The potential pitfalls that could happen should they go this way based on your experience and expertise. I think most people are reasonable and would hear that, even if they wanted to go. They'll be like, yeah, I understand that we might lose shitloads of money, but that's fine, right? Happy to risk it because sometimes it's all about trade-offs. And I think there's another thing that I would like to mention specifically in like co-CEO, or like, let's just say like two very senior stakeholders, which is like you gotta try your hardest to have like one person that just calls the shots, right? Like if you've ever been through like the design sprint, you have one decision maker, two decision makers, the project basically just goes, AWOL, right? Having like one person that's actually active on the project, or like, yeah, one that's active on the project that would actually contribute and actually give feedback or make these decisions, versus someone that might be more senior that is not engaged, doesn't really care, like, just like a pigeon just flying by, giving feedback and then peacing out. So I think that's really important if you can kind of solidify that decision making power to one person. So
Yeah.
not have it spread out, but then also communicate those trade offs as well. Okay, let me ask you a final question. And what are the most common mistakes designers make when asking for feedback?
Why does this feel like the hardest question? I'm not sure.
Want me to throw stuff at you?
Yeah, maybe through a scenario. I feel like I'm a bit stumped.
Um, okay, so it's hard. It's
Let's,
hard.
let's just
Yeah.
do it. Let's just do it from clients or from internal. I think it's
Let's do from clients. Let's do
from
from
client.
clients. Yeah.
Make mistake when you ask client for feedback. So there's all the obvious stuff that is like you haven't given it to them in a way where they can really focus on it. Again, that goes back to the whole workflow thing. Like, do you send them the wrong link, or you caught them at a bad time or something? I think one thing actually is maybe we haven't talked about is not setting expectations for when you want the feedback by and the impact of it. So you send something to them and you give feedback, and you're not telling them expectation of like how you want them to feedback on it. Let's be very tactical here. Like, do you want it in writing? Do you want it in a video? Do you want all of it at once from everyone? Do you want it collated? Do you only want them to show it to a couple people? Do they have 2 days, 1 day, 5 days? I think those are the kind of things you really need to set up and be very specific about. That's probably a big mistake and an easy oversight to make. If you don't give us feedback by this day, we will have to down tools and the timeline will slip. Common thing that happens. I think another thing as well is, the common one is just not being specific about what you want feedback on, right? So in the video example I showed of our app, is it on the concept? Is it on the specifics? What should you ignore? What have I decided not to do in this one? What's missing from this presentation? Is it complete? Is it incomplete? And then I think maybe the last one is not being flexible in like how you present it. And I think that's again where workflow can help a little bit. And I think people are really good at this, to be honest. Like, people use Loom sometimes. Maybe people sometimes say, let's jump on a call because it feels like we have to maybe discuss something. Is it a workshop? Am I sending you a file over? Like, maybe just being a bit more like adaptive and like what feedback do I want and what's the best way of getting it back, maybe that person loves giving video feedback. You should probably encourage it, to be honest.
Yeah. I think one thing is, like, you don't want to make also the client feel like it's a lot of work to give feedback, right? I think that was also one of the points where it's like, oh, like, you want me to do all this stuff, to, like, jump through hoops to give you feedback? Hey, make it easier for me. So whatever, like, at least meet them, halfway.
Yeah,
Is good,
that's
right?
that's a really, really good point, right? Like, it's the amount of time giving feedback takes is like really, especially if it's intense, it's like, or a big project, it's like takes forever. So they have to be prepared for the time they need to set aside, but also, that's where you can say early on, like, how do you like to like, we like to do feedback like this, does that work with you? And some businesses are like, we just want to do it all in writing. So like, cool, we'll send you the thing with a video and we'll do it all async. Like, happy to do that for you. We think sometimes we'll have to do meetings. So if we think it's not working, we'll have to ask for one, but let's try it, that works too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we are a little bit over, Jonathan. So I just again want to thank you for jumping on and sharing about feedback and helping the designers out there get better feedback. So before we let you go, is there anything we should have touched on that I didn't touch on?
Mm, no, I think we've covered everything. I do think I will say again that this is a very complicated topic, and I don't have all the answers. So please don't take what I'm saying as gospel. But I do really believe in two things: in empathy and energy. I think having empathy for the people you're working with, and maintaining energy on both sides, the client feeling excited and you feeling excited, you will create great things together. And that's probably the most important thing, I think, regarding all of this.
Mm.
And sometimes you need logistical tools like workflow to help you out to solve the fact that it doesn't feel like a drain, so you can maintain high energy, and have empathy for the people you're working with. And other times it's about expectations and resolving conflicts, and that also has to have high energy and empathy as well. Yeah.
Great, man. Okay, cool. Thank you so much again. And I want to take you off while I do the wrap up, but I appreciate your time today, dude.
No problem. Thank you so much. It was really fun. Thank you.
All right, man. See you soon.
Bye.
All right, guys. Again, Jonathan is prompting you to check out workflow.design. You can scan that QR code here. But before we finish and I tell you about our next session, I want to also share this feedback model I use, which is called AIR, Action, Impact, and Request. And it's not specifically used for design feedback. It's actually like giving feedback to a colleague or a person that you work with, right? So let's just quickly walk through it. So you guys can have this takeaway as well. If you're thinking more than, how do I give one-to-one relationship feedback, right? So, okay. So the first is action, right? Action, impact, request. So first action, describe the action of the person that led to this feedback being delivered. So for example, you can say, you were 10 minutes late to this morning meeting, right? And then the second is you deliver the impact of the action. So point out what happened, or impact related to you, the team, or the customer, or the business, right? So um, we not only raise what the impact was, but provide examples of why that action needed to have some sort of feedback. So, for example, like we said, hey, late to 10 minutes to this morning meeting. And then you might say something like, I think that this had a negative impact on the team and the rest of the meeting, uh, as we had less time to cover all the points in the agenda, for example, especially when you're meeting a client, say. And then lastly is the request. You have to have an ask so the person doesn't repeat the same behavior again, or the thing that you gave them feedback for, right? You should point out exactly, what they should be doing, right? Or do differently, or recommend your request. So you might say something in this example: I would like you to arrive on time at future meetings, or if you're going to be late and that you're held up, you need to let me know or someone else know. So us as a team are prepared to approach the client in a professional manner. So again, that is action, impact, and request. And you can kind of use that in a way so the feedback that you deliver is a little bit more objective, a little bit more structured, so people actually kind of know what to do when you give them feedback versus walking away being like, what do you mean, right? Like if you've found yourself in that situation, it's like, how do I give better feedback, especially as a manager, for example, then you could use that. So again, to wrap this up, I want to thank the folks at workflow.design. Thank you for sponsoring. And if you want to manage all your creative work and feedback and approvals in one place, check out Workflow. Multiple stakeholders, multiple channels for feedback, multiple types of creative assets like Figma, videos, or websites. You could manage it all in one of these QR codes. They're both the same. You can scan one of them. Okay. Or you can head to workflow.design. So feedback helps you progress versus hinders you. Okay. And lastly, I want to talk about the next session we have, which is May the 7th, next week, and how to design for accessibility with Megan Thomas. And we'll be speaking about how to do an accessibility evaluation as a junior designer, how to present your accessibility findings, and how to approach your business as a freelancer, and a lot more. So if you want to listen to more chats like the one we had today or the one we're going to have, then live.uxplaybook.org, or again, one of these QR codes on the screen. I need to get better at pointing. But that's it. And also, if you are so inclined, subscribe to the YouTube to get notified for future events. And until next time, bye. This is the design of everyday people.
It sound right, boy.